So Tna Impact took place once again from Little Rock, Arkansas. The show starts with AJ Styles coming to the ring. Styles says that he's cool with Hogan trying to make the situation better between him and Dixie. But he realizes that Dixie is going to be a bitch about it. He says that he doesn't want to talk about Hogan and Dixie. He wants to talk about Bully Ray. And Styles says that he knows who Bully Ray is and that he is the guy that Styles is going to beat to win the world title at Bound for Glory. He says that he is without a contract, so he's putting everything at stake. Just as Styles says that Bully Ray isn't the most dangerous guy, Bully Ray and Brooke Tessmacher come to the ring. Bully Ray says that Dixie is getting to him because Styles used the word hope when talking about winning the title. Because of that, he says that Styles is having doubts. Off mic, Styles tells Bully Ray that he never used that word. Bully Ray says that Dixie is a hot chick, but not as hot as Tessmacher. He says that Styles needs to start worrying about him. Bully Ray runs off the list of guys that he has taken down, so doing the same to Styles won't be different. He says that he doesn't have to ask Styles who he is because he is the guy that beat him in the last man standing match 2 years ago. Bully Ray says that the only worth that Styles has to him is to separate him from his fans. He says that he is tired of the AJ chants, which of course sends the fans into mode. But after Bound for Glory, they won't be doing it at all. Styles says that Bully Ray has a similar trait that Dixie has. He uses people to get what he wants and then gets rid of them when they become expendable. Bully Ray says he's fine with the comparison to Dixie, being rich and unforgiving. He says that Styles better pray if he intends to beat him for the title, or else Styles will be at home with his family and without a contract. Styles tells Bully Ray that he should have his attention on his match later in the show. And Bully Ray says that he doesn't have one. But Styles tells him that Hogan has made a match with him and Samoa Joe. Decent segment. The main event is finally getting the build that should have started 2 weeks ago. But this would have been better if the conversation didn't revolve around Dixie. Her name was peppered throughout the dialogue, thus continuing to give the main event a secondary feel because the two participants are reacting to what Dixie is saying and doing. Hopefully that will be eliminated in the last 2 shows before Bound for Glory, but I doubt it. So then we see AJ Styles and Dixie Carter backstage. Styles tells Dixie that she thinks she's in control, but after Bound for Glory, he will be running the show. And Dixie tells him that he is not under contract and that his match with Bully Ray will be his last commitment with the company. And then she tells her 2 security guys to escort Styles out of the arena, but Styles leaves on his own. So then we had a tag team match. Kenny King and Chris Sabin, accompanied by Velvet Sky, versus Manic and Jeff Hardy. And Austin Aries did guest commentary. Okay match. The match ends with Manic and Chris Sabin both down on the mat. Sabin makes the tag to Kenny King, who grabs Manic by the leg and prevents him from tagging Jeff Hardy. King lifts Manic up, but Manic flips himself over King and backs into the corner. King charges, but Manic jumps over him, slides through Sabin's legs, and makes the tag to Hardy. Hardy punches Sabin, punches King, punches Sabin again, and clotheslines King. Hardy whips King off the ropes, but King reverses the whip and sends Hardy into the ropes. However, Hardy hits King with a flying elbow. Then he catches Sabin with a mule kick. Hardy kicks King in the midsection and executes a sit-out suplex. He goes for the pin, but Sabin makes the save. Sabin delivers a couple of punches to Hardy before he and King whip Jeff Hardy into the ropes. Hardy ducks their double sledgehammer, comes off the ropes, and does a double clothesline takedown. Hardy kicks King in the midsection and sets him up for a twist of fate, but Sabin catches him from behind with an enziguri. Then King executes a Northern Light suplex on Hardy, but Manic breaks up the pin attempt. King lifts Manic for a possible royal flush, but Manic slips out and pushes King into Sabin, who is standing on the ring apron, causing Sabin to fall to the ring floor. Manic brings King to the middle of the ring and executes the double knee gut buster. Hardy comes off the top rope with a swanton bomb and gets to 3. The winners of the match, Manic and Jeff Hardy. Manic and Hardy have their arms raised when Sabin attacks Hardy from behind, then goes after Manic. Sabin turns his attention back to Hardy and does a sliding drop kick, which sends Hardy out of the ring. He kicks Manic down in the corner. And then Austin Aries comes into the ring and chases Sabin away. Then Aries makes a match for Bound for Glory, a 4-way match with himself, Sabin, Manic, and Hardy. Hardy comes back into the ring and decides that the match will be an Ultimate X match since he has never been in one. It's always interesting to see wrestlers make their own matches and determine stipulations, as it makes your quote-unquote management irrelevant. What's even more interesting is that Manic said nothing. After all, he's only the X Division champion, so why would he have a say in what type of match is going to take place at Bound for Glory and which wrestlers are going to participate in it? Oh yes, I forgot. He only speaks when his mask is off, backstage. Kenny King should be in this match instead of Jeff Hardy. King has issues with each of these 3 guys. He has an issue with Sabin because he lost the X Division title to Sabin in the Ultimate X match at Slammiversary. He has an issue with Aries going back to last week because he blames Aries for dressing as Suicide then, Manic now, and winning the X Division title, thus costing him the chance to win it back. And technically, he could have an issue with Manic because Manic allowed Aries to jump him and steal his costume, which led to Aries winning the X Division title instead of King. Jeff Hardy, yes, I get it. It's Jeff Hardy. But he has no issues with any of these guys. Kenny King does. So then we see Hogan and Sting sitting backstage. Sting says that the last time this heel authority situation happened was when Eric Bischoff was in control, and he wants to know why it's happening again with Dixie Carter. Hogan says that Dixie has been consumed by power and it has made her worse than Bischoff. He says that he needs to decide whether to join Dixie or not, and Sting tells Hogan that he will support whatever choice he makes. Then some chick walks into the room and gives Hogan a gift from Dixie, and Hogan frantically opens the package, and it's a watch. He asks Sting if he was given a similar watch, and Sting confirms that. Okay. So then we see a tape segment from last week with Sting and Magnus that took place after the match against Aces and Eights. Magnus tells Sting that even though he and Samoa Joe tried to tell him to not let the Extraordinary Gentlemen's Organization get to him, they got to him. Magnus says that he is going to go to Hogan and get a match pitting himself against the Gentlemen. He says that he will deal with them one at a time and that Sting is not going to discourage him from doing it. Sting leaves him be and exits. So now we see Magnus being more defiant towards Sting, possibly to the point in which he would leave the Main Event Mafia. So then we had a gauntlet match. Magnus versus the Extraordinary Gentlemen's Organization. Magnus starts off against Christopher Daniels. Solid match. The first match ends with Daniels applying a chin lock to Magnus. Magnus gets to his feet and delivers 3 blows to the midsection. Then he comes off the ropes, but Daniels kicks him and double underhooks him for a possible angel's wings, but Magnus flips him with a backdrop. Magnus hits Daniels with a clothesline and a boot to the face. He ducks a swing from Daniels and lifts him up, but Daniels does a backflip. Daniels wraps his arms around Magnus' torso, but Magnus reverses it. Daniels sends an elbow to the face and comes off the rope. As he does that, Magnus comes off the ropes from the same side and nails him with a clothesline takedown. Magnus goes to the top rope, but Daniels grabs his arm and pulls him off the rope, causing Magnus to land on the top rope and fall to the mat. Daniels face plants him and locks him in a submission hold, but Magnus reaches the ropes. Daniels pulls Magnus closer to the corner and goes to the top rope. He comes off with a moonsault, but Magnus lifts his leg up and nails Daniels in the midsection. He executes the driver on Daniels and gets the pin. The winner of the first match, Magnus. Kazarian is next. Solid match. The second match ends with Magnus whipping Kazarian to the corner. Kazarian jumps onto the middle rope and leaps back toward Magnus, but Magnus catches him and delivers a suplex. He goes to the top rope and comes off with a flying elbow drop. Magnus goes for the pin, but Kazarian puts his foot on the rope. Magnus attempts to lift Kazarian, but Kazarian escapes and pushes Magnus into the corner. Kazarian charges, but Magnus hits him with an elbow. He goes to the middle rope, but Kazarian hits him with a kick to the face. Magnus keels over on the top rope as Kazarian lifts him off in an inverted position, setting him up for the fade to black. However, Magnus flips Kazarian over and applies the cloverleaf. Kazarian taps out. The winner of the second match, Magnus. Magnus waits for his final opponent, Robert Roode. Roode stalls his walk to the ring, distracting Magnus long enough for Kazarian to attack him from behind and re-injure his knee. Solid match. Roode works on Magnus' knee for the first part of the match, and the third match ends with Magnus applying the cloverleaf on Roode. Roode hits Magnus' knee with his fist, causing Magnus to release the hold. Roode charges Magnus in the corner, but Magnus hits him with an uppercut, sending Roode to the mat. Magnus goes to the top rope, but Roode jumps onto the middle rope and positions himself in front of Magnus. Magnus pushes him off and grimaces in pain as he comes off the top rope with the flying elbow drop, but Roode moves out of the way. Roode quickly applies the crossface. Magnus tries to reach the ropes, but Roode pulls him away and puts Magnus in the ankle lock. Magnus taps out. The winner of the match, Robert Roode. After the match, Magnus throws a chair at ringside in frustration and refuses to leave. Sting comes to the ring and says something to Magnus, but Magnus shakes his head. Sting grabs the mic and tells Magnus that he would rather talk with him privately because he would prefer not speaking publicly, so he tells Magnus to come to the back. Magnus says no. He's tired of this. He struggles to make it back into the ring. And then Magnus says that the other Main Event Mafia members may say that he has what it takes to be the best, but he doesn't see it that way. He says that Sting, Samoa Joe, and Kurt Angle each had the opportunity to define himself in wrestling, but he can only settle for almost making it. Sting tries to give Magnus encouragement by telling him to look at the positives, but Magnus says he is tired of hearing speeches. Magnus says that one's place in the wrestling business is measured by what one does in the ring and that he isn't getting it done. Sting agrees, saying that he was in Magnus' spot years ago when he needed that single match that would launch his career. And he makes reference to the match that he had with Ric Flair back in the NWA at the first Clash of the Champions card in 1988, relaying the point that instead of whining about not making it, he did what it took to get the match that would allow him to make it. Magnus says that he used that match to pattern his career after Sting and that he saw him as someone to look up to in the business. Magnus says that after losing the Bound for Glory Series final match, he is nowhere. And and he wants to know who's going to put him over. Sting says that he will be the one to do it at Bound for Glory. And they shake hands. I'm impressed by how Magnus has been selling emotion in the ring. When he tapped out to Rude, the way he displayed the combination of the pain he was suffering from the knee injury with the humiliation of losing again, specifically to the gentleman, was convincing. I don't have that much of an issue with Magnus versus Sting at Bound for Glory, but I wish that the wording could have been different. Instead of giving the impression that Sting is going to put Magnus on the map, why not have Magnus say that he's going to put himself on the map? That way it won't sound like Sting is going to, quote unquote, help Magnus win. So then we see Hogan and Austin Aries backstage. Do I have to elaborate how pointless this was? No? Okay. So then we see a video retrospective of Hogan's career in TNA. Naturally, TNA would telegraph what would happen later. They wouldn't be showing this unless Hogan is, quote unquote, leaving in some way. So then we see Chris Sabin backstage, and he is asked why he won't be at ringside for Velvet Sky's match against Brooke Tessmacher. He says she'll be fine, but he has to focus on his opponents in the Ultimate X match at Bound for Glory. Then he says he's going to drink his diet soda, do yoga, and meditate. I've already said what TNA needs to do to get Sabin over as a heel. This is not working. So then we see the Extraordinary Gentlemen's Organization backstage. Do I have to elaborate how lame this was? No? Good. So then we had the number one contenders match for the Women's Championship. Velvet Sky versus Brooke Tessmacher. There's really nothing to say about a match that never took place. Lady Tapa came out. Tessmacher bailed. Velvet didn't, and as a result, she was on the receiving end of a monster smash. Lady Tapa was fine from a physical standpoint, although her kicks to Velvet were sloppy. She has to scale way back on the screaming or eliminate it completely. And she could do without the constant sticking out of the tongue and the raising of her hair. It was just too much. Quiet domination is what made Awesome Kong effective. She allowed her intimidation and her physicality to speak for her, and that's what Tapa needs to do. Yes, she's going to be compared constantly to Kong, and she shouldn't try to be Kong. With more emphasis on her positives and more minimizing on her negatives, she can make her persona work. An official debut that was okay, but it's a start in rebuilding the women's division. So then we see a video on this wrestler named Ethan. He drives a Maserati and he talks down to people, yet we don't see his face. Ethan is a wrestler named Michael Hutter. A wrestling friend of mine who watches the traveling circus, and I don't know why he does, informed me that this guy worked in their developmental system as someone named Derek Bateman, whoever that is. If this Ethan is going to be some rich, arrogant playboy with a serious slant, it might work. But if he's going to be another comedy guy, that we don't need. So then we see a video on James Storm and Gunner. A well-produced video. Now, if TNA would have placed as much attention and detail to building Storm and Gunner as the tag team champions as they did with this video, they probably would be over more. So then we see that there will be a tag team gauntlet match during the Bound for Glory pre-show on Spike TV airing 1 hour before Bound for Glory begins. The 4 teams participating will be Bad Influence, The Glorified Jobbers, Eric Young and Dumbass Joseph Park, and Chavo Guerrero and Hernandez. The winning team will face James Storm and Gunner for the World Tag Team Championship at Bound for Glory. There is only one team that should face Storm and Gunner, and I shouldn't even have to say it. If you're a logical TNA fan, the answer is clear. So then we see a video on Kurt Angle promoting his induction into the TNA Hall of Fame. Could we see the Extraordinary Gentlemen's Organization crash the Hall of Fame ceremony and embarrass Angle, thus leading to Rude versus Angle at Bound for Glory? So then we had a non-title match, the main event. Bully Ray versus Samoa Joe. Okay match. For a main event, it should have been better than it was. The match ends with Bully Ray going for an elbow drop on Samoa Joe, but missing. The two exchange punches before Joe hits him with a series of blows. Bully Ray comes back with a knee to the midsection. He comes off the ropes, but Joe nails him with an elbow, then a clothesline. He picks Bully Ray up and executes an inverted atomic drop. Joe comes off the ropes with a kick to the face and follows that with a senton. Joe whips Bully Ray from the corner, but Bully Ray reverses the whip. Bully Ray charges the corner, but Joe whacks him with a kick to the face. He goes to the middle rope and hits Bully Ray with a flying kick off the rope. Joe goes for the pin, but Bully Ray kicks out. Bully Ray stumbles to the corner and Joe charges, but Bully Ray throws up an elbow. He comes out of the corner and sends Joe back into the same corner, but referee Earl Hebner gets in the way. Joe crashes into him and Hebner goes down. Bully Ray tries to throw a kick, but Joe sidesteps him and applies the rear naked choke. Then Joe lets Bully Ray go and throws him to the mat, choosing to tend to Hebner. Bully Ray goes to the corner and takes out a chain. Joe hits him from behind and props him up on the top turnbuckle. Joe pops Bully Ray with a forearm but goes back to Hebner and tries to pick him up off the mat. Joe turns back to Bully Ray, who comes off the middle rope and hits Joe with the chain, which lands on the mat. Hebner sees it and calls for the bell. Bully Ray is disqualified. The winner of the match by DQ, Samoa Joe. After the match, Bully Ray shoves Hebner down and throws Joe out of the ring. He sends Joe headfirst into the commentator's table. Then Bully Ray screams to Taz that he's going to pile drive Joe on the concrete, so he pulls up the ringside padding. He positions Joe in order to execute it, but AJ Styles comes to the ring, leaping over the guardrail and coming off the ring steps with a shot to Bully Ray. And then Dixie's security duo come out to confront Styles, but he escapes into the crowd. Once again, Dixie's presence is affecting the build for this match. Instead of possibly seeing a physical confrontation between Styles and Bully Ray that could have been brief but effective, then seeing Styles go into the crowd, we see Styles chased into the crowd by Dixie's goons. TNA only has 2 shows left to build this match, and overall, the build hasn't been good. So then we see Dixie Carter come to the ring. And for some reason, TNA has given her theme music, which sucks, of course. Dixie says that people are upset over the unpopular decisions that she has made recently, but she's used to it. She says that she can't help it that her critics don't understand how business works. Dixie says that Hogan understands business and she tells him to come out. Hogan comes to the ring. Dixie wants to know if Hogan is ready for her to take his career to a high where it has never been. Dixie makes reference to the watch that she gave him that he has on, and she asks him if he's going to join her or not. Hogan thanks her for the watch and says that he has always wanted to team up with a hot chick who is the most powerful person in wrestling. He says that he appreciates the offer, but it's not for him, and he quits. Hogan leaves and Dixie goes running after him on the ramp. They exchange words, then Hogan keeps walking. She grabs his arm and Hogan tells her to let go. Then Dixie sinks to her knees and grabs Hogan's leg, and Hogan is dragging her down the ramp. Hogan finally pulls away and leaves, and Dixie tries to salvage whatever dignity she has left and fires him. He already quit, Dixie. Show ends. This is why the decision to turn Dixie heel was a mistake. TNA figured that Hogan would automatically go along with building Dixie up as a heel authority, and having her fire him would have escalated that and brought incredible heat down on her. Hogan's 100% creative control means that he's going to make himself look as good as possible. He was not going to allow Dixie to fire him because he wasn't going to help build her as a heel if it doesn't benefit him. That's Hogan, selfish as always. Because of that, Hogan made sure that we saw the image of Dixie groveling on her knees, her arms wrapped around Hogan's leg, begging Hogan to stay. What Dixie did the last 2 weeks, as terrible as it was canceled out completely because Hogan wouldn't go along with putting her over. Now, some heel Dixie supporters have said that she saved face by firing him. No, she didn't. Her face is still on the ramp. That image of Dixie clinging to Hogan was Hogan saying this: TNA needs me, and without me, the company is nothing. We would like to see TNA prove Hogan wrong. But will TNA end up proving him right? I'm Tazmart 2002, and that was my TNA Impact Analysis for October 3rd, 2013. If you're listening to me on YouTube, please leave your comments below. Click the like or dislike button, and if you subscribe, I would really appreciate it. If you're listening to me on the Wrestling News Talk Facebook page, you can leave your comments below and click the like button if you like what I've been saying. If you have any questions or comments about TNA or wrestling in general, you can reach me on Twitter, Tazmart2002, Tazmark 2002. And if your comments exceed the 140, get at me with an email, Tazmart2002@gmail.com. Once again, Chuck P and I will be doing our TNA Impact Review live this Friday morning at 11:30 on his channel. So make sure that you tune in and watch us. If you're unable to watch us live, you can always watch the archive of the review on Chuck P's channel. And he also does NFL predictions, so if you haven't checked Chuck P out, give him a look. Decent show. A build for Bound for Glory finally begins, but overall, a decent show. Now what? Is Hogan really gone? The negotiations are still going on, and while that's happening, Hogan quitting will likely still be the focus leading up to Bound for Glory. Why would that be the case if he's left the company? Because they're still negotiating, and they will probably stall until after Bound for Glory because they feel they still need Hogan to bring attention to the pay-per-view. Once Bound for Glory ends, things will be clear. Or will they? The result of this will define the future of the company. But will that future continue to be the past? I'm Tazmart 2002. Gone.